on the
I
computer.
have a quick suggestion maybe though before we start recording. If we're just gonna do it as like a recorded video, obviously, maybe if your wife is still gonna be sending you questions that she's getting, we could just we can like write, or maybe she could also write down the order in which she's doing the questions, and then when you go back and edit it, you could put like time tags or time, I don't know what those are called, but like at 5 minutes and 20 seconds we discuss this question or something like that.
Yeah, so I'm texting her.
Okay.
I don't think anybody will.
Kevin, you're
I'm not,
muted.
if we are not on live, then nobody's going to be there.
There won't be any questions.
There won't be any questions.
That's true, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining me today. This is going to be a Facebook Live event, but Facebook has not been so kind to me today and us, I think. And we will make do and record, and we will post this afterward. So my name is Sunil Dasgupta. I'm a parent of 3 MCPS kids and a professor at UMBC at the Universities of Shady Grove. And I'm a candidate for the Board of Education at large seat. So today, thank you to all of you for joining us to talk about how to help students learn at home. This is a big topic. It's a topic that, that can include everything from, spaces, what space at home you make to be able to do your work, to, what mindset do you come in and what mindset do you have when you work at home. So today I'm gonna, if you're watching this, please feel free to share this link out to your network, and hopefully we will be able to provide some insight to parents and I hope teachers as well on how to help students learn at home. I'm gonna introduce some folks and then let others speak a little bit more about themselves. First off, Kevin Schindel is a teacher at Blair High School. He does research seminars, teaches government and US history in the CAP program. And to my knowledge, one of the people that students swear by. He's also the sponsor of the SGA. I'm gonna read out Grace's bio next. Grace Nyblade is a clinical social worker who has worked in Montgomery County with children and adolescents for 20 years. She owns a clinic that's providing services via teletherapy and is running Saturday support groups for parents struggling to manage with online learning. So she also has 2 high school students in MCPS and has been working with MCPS IEPs for a long time. Then I have Becky. Becky is a mom of 2 elementary students in Montgomery County. She's been teaching in the district for 15 years, most of those in 1st grade. And she's just finished a successful week of summer school through Zoom. We have Orchid Dargahi, who is a Spanish teacher at Silver Spring International Middle School now.
Sligo Middle School.
Pardon me? Sligo.
Sligo Middle School.
Sligo Middle School.
They're both in Silver Spring though.
Yeah, they're so close. So Orchid, do you want to say a few more words about yourself?
Sure. I actually switched careers a couple years ago. I used to be an accountant / auditor. I'm really glad that I made the switch. I love my job, and I've been teaching now for what is going to be my 5th year. Teaching Spanish. I've always really loved learning about different cultures, and I was always interested in world languages, and I'm really much more fulfilled in this position than I was as an auditor, let's say.
So just a little bit, Orchid, my first job was my undergraduate is in accounting, by the way.
Mine too.
And my first job was an accountant auditor.
Yep, mine too.
I ran away. Lastly, we have Susan Loftus, who is a a teacher at Burning Tree Elementary School, and she teaches and learns things that are physical. And Susan, you want to say a few more words?
Yes, thank you, Sunil. I've been in Montgomery County, I think 22 years. I've taught at Tacoma Park Middle, Einstein High School, and now Burning Tree Elementary. I've been teaching for 36 years, and it keeps me young. And online learning is definitely different for PE, and I guess we'll talk about that more as we go along. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me here.
So here's the question I want to start with. So if you are thinking about this idea of helping students learn at home, what is the couple of big things that strike you? Let's begin let's start. I don't know, Becky, you want to start? Okay.
Sure. So I have my perspective as a teacher and as a parent. Certainly the children, mine own included, need a space where they can sit comfortably, and not a bed, but a chair or something similar to that where they can sit. At the same time, we don't want them sitting there for hours and hours. So I do give one of my children the opportunity to lay on his stomach with his Chromebook in front of him. And then as a teacher, I actually stand to teach. I found after the spring that I was sitting too much, and that was actually for a shorter amount of time. So this summer I switched to a standing desk, so I stand to teach now, which is an option for children. My own children do not want to stand when they're learning. So they do have seats that are designated. That is where they sit for their learning. But I do actually move to another space when I do PE or a brain break if I'm doing something more active than just this space, because obviously my teaching wall is right behind me. So I actually take my Chromebook to another room to do yoga or any kind of really active brain break and things like that. So to answer the question a little more concisely, children need a space where they can sit and focus for a while, but also space to move so they're not always sitting down.
Rebecca, what about routines? Can you talk at all about routines that work for kids?
So, well, again, I can speak from both of my perspectives. I think that children, and I'm talking about elementary school, they can attend to the screen for, I really hesitate to even say up to an hour. I would say 45 minutes or less. Even in a 45-minute block, I actually still gave my students one quick brain break in the middle of that. So it was really, they were never actually sitting for 45 full minutes. And then for my own children, as I actually said last week, I sent them out for a bike ride a few times between they had 15-minute blocks with a 10-minute break. And I sent them out for, to ride their bikes a couple of times between those. And I can't say that's a routine because I didn't send them out every single time, but I did kind of explain the expectation was that they needed to try to stay focused for that 50 minutes, and their teachers were wonderful. They also go to school in this county. Their teachers were wonderful, and they did a great job keeping my kids engaged. And but my own children understood that those 10 minutes were their times to go to the bathroom, to grab a snack, to ride their bike, or go outside and get fresh air if they needed to. And another thing that was a little off routine was if my kids wanted to sit outside in the shade, we still had Wi-Fi connection out there. It's not that far. I did give them that option because, again, I think fresh air is, it helps some of us focus better and stay engaged. So did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I so ask, when you say you want to send the kids for a bike ride, are you talking about your own children or are you talking about your students?
So for my students, I plan brain breaks. I use I either do it verbally with them for like a game like Simon Says or freeze dance, something like that, or trivia, jokes. I do those things with them, or I use a YouTube or a Go Noodle, which are usually less than 5 minutes. It's an active like dance it's similar to physical education, but it's real quick, and it's just a real quick targeted song or activity to keep them moving. So that's for my students. The bike rides are for my own children because their bikes are right out front. So I would send them out to, if I could tell, both of my children, and I think this is true of all children, they need to move, but one of my children in particular, for him to stay engaged and for him to be able to attend, especially through a computer where he can't be in close contact with his teacher, even though, again, his teachers are outstanding, but he really has got to have physical movement to be successful for close to 50 minutes.
I want to chime in on what we're talking about. So I love the idea of brain breaks, and I think they're essential. But one thing I'm thinking about is about how this would have worked in my own household if, you know, I was like a kid again. And so my mom, she had a home daycare and actually still does. And I remember from like 12 to 3, we had to be quiet. Like we were not allowed to like watch TV. We weren't allowed to do anything. If we were to do anything, we had to go outside and not wake up the kids because that was nap time. So, you know, I mean, every household is different. Every family situation is different. But like, I'm thinking, you know, how would not, I mean, I love brain breaks and I think they're essential, like I said, but again, like, what about the students who literally can't do that? So then it comes kind of like back to the idea of how can we designate a space for the students where, you know, they can take those brain breaks, they can make a little bit more noise if they have to, they can interact without, you know, worrying about if they're getting in the way of something else that's happening in the house. So so again, I'm just thinking about how this would work. And then, you know, would I have been able to have like a designated space in my house? And then I think, oh yeah, sure, I could have sat at the dining room table, but not between 12 and 3. So it's just kind of like, you have to designate or dedicate so much time to actually making a space that would work. And it's such a challenge. It really is, because you have to really plan it out.
Right. And to add on to that, there are children, actually not in my house, I don't mean in my household, but in my family, in my extended family, that I've suggested to my very close friends that they, if their kids have to be in the same room, that they get headphones, because thankfully where I am, I can be in this room. My son is not too far away, but in another room, and my daughter is a little farther away, but she can still check it. I can still check in on them, and they can still check in on me if they need me. But if there's a different situation in the home where the children all have to be in the same space, they might need headphones so that they can attend to their own teacher and their own class and not get distracted by, because I can honestly say that sometimes when I'm teaching, I can hear a friend of mine in another grade level teaching the sibling. So that's how close sometimes the kids are in the space.
Right. And I think a lot of it is going to be so much, oh, sorry, Susan, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say a lot of it is like trial and error, just kind of seeing how it goes. And I think, you know, last semester, it was kind of like a trial run in a way, but it also wasn't, because we are not going to be doing what we did last semester. I mean, it's going to be much more robust, as we've been calling it. And so, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even, it sounds so intuitive, right? Like headphones, but I didn't even think about that. And then, I don't know, again, I just feel like it's just going to be so much trial and error. And the first couple months are just going to be a lot of like trying to make it work until it works.
Right. Something that's different this coming this fall is elementary school art, music, and PE are having live Zoom meetings. We are following an elementary schedule. So 4th grade might have the first 40 minutes of PE. And then, so I'm just thinking, first time it popped in my head was 5 minutes ago. If a family has 3 kids, whether they're all in elementary or not, one of them might be at PE while the others are at math and reading. So I'm not saying we can't figure it out. We'll figure it out and the families will figure it out. But Also, music will be live. Music classes at the elementary level. All three of these were not live in the spring.
Right.
We pushed out lessons that had activities for them to go outside and do if they were able to, or could do in front of the screen. But I think the rationale, which it really wasn't explained, they want kids to have PE, music and art time as if it were a regular brick and mortar school. But that could, depending on the home situation, someone might require quiet time at the same time that someone has music and someone over there has PE.
So I think that there's a very different sort of setup and routine when it comes to the older kids. So I have 2 high school kids, and in my house we've given up the dining room. The dining room table is now 2 computer stations, and I took down a very large painting, and it is now a whiteboard where I can track their assignments and they can check off that they were at the Zoom call. And so in a lot of ways, I'm lucky because I have enough space to figure out how to do that. But I also think that one of the things that is really important is the mental space of this spring. We were thinking this was a short-term crisis management. And so planning in crisis management doesn't usually happen very well. Whereas this semester, we've sort of known we're going here. It's, at least from where I am and with my friends, there was not actually a question about whether or not we were going to be entering the school buildings. And so there was a lot sort of more time to think about, okay, this is what happened in the spring, and this is what worked and didn't work, and this is what needs to shift. And speaking from an IEP standpoint, I attended a midsummer IEP for my oldest, and one of the things that I said is he has on his IEP organizational goals. And how in the world do we help him with organization through the screen? And I said, it's actually completely obvious. He needs a Word document that lists each of the Zoom links that he can have open on his computer screen in one place, in one document, so that he can say, click, 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 click. And the IEP team looked at me and is like, oh, good plan. Because the biggest barrier that he had in the spring was, okay, that Zoom link didn't work, so now I'm going to switch to Canvas, and then I'm going to switch to MCPS Classroom, and then I'm going to look, and he can't do that many steps without giving up.
I think that's a good idea for every student.
I agree. I think that one of the things that is the most difficult is that when you're in a physical school building, the first week you figure out exactly how to sort of move around. And in the first week, hopefully, of MCPS's classroom this time, we're going to be able to coach them and help them create a document that has all of the links for all of the different classrooms so that there's a lot less hunting and pecking. It allows for more structure. I think the routines are really important. One of the things that I've been emphasizing all summer, and I emphasized it all spring, and I will probably say it every day through the fall semester, is that a lot of my middle school and high school kids are really excited they can get out of bed and sit in front of the computer. And I have been saying breakfast, breakfast, breakfast until I am blue in the face, because you can't tune into anything if you're hungry.
Right.
And especially because I'm talking to middle school and high school students who are in the middle of growth spurts, you have to have breakfast. So I'm trying to help you understand, no, I still need you to have that morning routine before school where you get up and you get dressed so that your body is signaled to be paying attention. If you roll out of bed and go to class in your pajamas, you're not telling your body to focus. And if you're not eating breakfast, you're gonna run out of energy. And for a lot of the older grades, you've got a whole mix of people in various different growth spurts. And even if they get breakfast, they're still gonna be hungry at 10 and at 11 and at 12. But it might be because my high school kids are over 6 feet. They're hungry all the time. But I think that it's really interesting, and I think it's really important to emphasize that before we go to like, let's restructure everything so that people can focus, they still need the same routines that we've always had. They need to have breakfast, they need to have bathroom breaks, they need to get a drink of water. And so I think that as much changes is happening with online learning, we also have to stay focused on the basics. They have to eat, they have to focus. They have to change their clothes so that they know they're paying attention, so that they're awake. That's why somebody mentioned earlier, I think it was Rebecca, that please don't do schoolwork in your bed. Your bed is for sleeping. Your body does not recognize that you're in math class if you're in your bed. Your body thinks you're going back to sleep. And so trying to get them to sit upright, a dining room chair is hard to sit in, but if you think about it, they're in straight back chairs in every single one of their classes. And that's how their body knows to focus. And they need to go with what their body knows, even if it's uncomfortable. Stand up, stretch, do the bear crawl, whatever it's going to take. And it's the same things that happen in school in between. I still sort of joke because when my oldest was in elementary school, he had a special assignment to take a note up to the front desk every day so that he would get a movement break. And he thought he had the biggest privilege in the world, and it was wonderful for him. And I still prompt him to move all the time. Move your body, it will help you focus. So I think that it's really important that we don't, like, we're thinking of this as a new thing, but we also need to pay attention to the fact that the kids still need all of the other things. And I think that that's important.
Kevin, what are your thoughts?
So, yeah, I think, those kind of very practical, routine-based, organizational-based things are really important. I'm coming at it, I think, from a different perspective as a high school teacher, and I've got 3 kids. One is entering his freshman year in college, and then I have a high school junior, and I have a 7th grader. And so I think, we try to establish those routines. One of the things, the one thing I'll say from a practical standpoint is it would be great if parents really encourage their kids to put their cameras on, right? Grace mentioned that, kids have to get out of the bed. If what I taught last spring, if kids were out of the bed, that was a win. And it didn't matter what time the class was because, I had a good relationship with most of my students. And so I think they felt comfortable with cameras on, and we were, tried to simulate dialogue and discussion as much as possible. But when I looked in on my children's classes, we're talking like 10, 11, 12, o'clock during the day. And there would be one teacher with their camera on and literally 30 names on the screen. No one would put their camera on. And for me, I rely on physical space. I 90% of my class is based in discussion and dialogue and seminar. And so I need that physical space. distance learning is not even a close second, but it may be the only thing we have right now. And so how do you create a community when it's just one teacher droning on and on, looking at a bunch of names of kids who may have gone up and gotten breakfast and just left their screen open, you know? I also think, you know, how, I don't know, I'm going to get a little bit philosophical if you'll indulge me for a second here. And one of the things that worries me is that, you know, we talk a lot about reimagining, you know, and that I think that's part of Montgomery County's plan, right? Reimagine and reimagine, recover, and reopen, something like that.
Right.
I don't see much reimagination, and I think this is going to be a big problem, even if we get all those practical, pragmatic, organizational ducks in line. Is that we're not reimagining? I think we're just kind of repurposing, right? And as a high school teacher, the one adjective that most students will describe their high school experience with more than any other adjective is the word boring. And so I think a lot of what we're attempting to do now is take what admittedly students will tell you we didn't do very well in the classroom and transferring that to a digital space. And I think it's just going to fail miserably. I'm not, you know, I think we really need to reimagine what this looks like. And so I'm encouraging my students and trying to get SGA around issues of students where they advocate for what they're learning. I think there has to be more student engagement because this, and then I was talking to my son, you know, my 11th grade son the other day. I said, are you looking forward to getting back to school? And he said, I am. I really, really am, just because I want to see my friends' faces again. And I live in Howard County, and so we're all virtual. He said, I just want to be in a chat room and do group work with them, right? And he's saying, I'm hoping that it's not just a teacher talking into a screen for 50 minutes. And the fear is that might be what it's going to be for a lot, right? And so I have deep concerns that we look at ourselves and we are treated systemically by parents, by students, as little more than content deliverers. All we do is we have a content, we have a course, and we deliver it. And I'm not in the business of content creation, right? If I'm teaching about the civil rights movement, you don't need to see me. You should watch Eyes on the Prize. And that's what I did, right? During the civil rights movement. I challenged my students to watch all 15 hours of Eyes on the Prize. And if they did, they didn't have to write anything. A parent just emailed me and said, hey, we had some great discussions. My child actually watched this. That's a win. Oh, what am I going to tell you about the civil rights movement that you can't learn from there, right? And so I think that a lot of us are just kind of going into this as we're going to deliver content when, number one, I don't know if that's the role that the world demands of us right now. You know, I think that this is different. We all know this, right? And so I'm trying to, you know, frame this in a sense of how can you help your kid and next year. And again, I'm coming from the high school perspective. I think they need to demand to have some things, some questions that they derive themselves, that they pursue with others, right? With common interests. Teachers inspire that kind of thing. I just get really, really concerned. And I've already gotten feedback from some of the students that I'm going to have next year. I've asked them, what do you need from me to start the school year? And 99% of them said, I need you to help me with organization. I need very clear expectations on what I'm supposed to do. I need you to be flexible. I need you to help me with a calendar, right? And so all of these things, we're just looking to transfer what we've always done through a digital airwave. And I'm looking at it like, I don't want to do that at all, right? This is the time to really reimagine and empower kids in the educational process. And so to get them to create lessons that maybe they teach, right, virtually. Yeah. There's so much that you know, we just, I don't know. I think now's the time for really, really bold strokes. And kids are going to get really frustrated when they come home and directions aren't clear and they're going to be held accountable. You know, and a lot of my students are worried about grades. I don't care about grades. And yeah. It saddens me deeply that some kids are not going to be able to access the education that's going to be offered them at all. And they're going to get penalized. And they're going to get penalized big time because of nothing that they have done and only because of the conditions that they're in. And I think that's a big problem. So
Go ahead.
I do want to put in a plug. I think that one of the most exciting things that I've seen is that, I don't know how many of you saw the Kids After Hours article, where they're doing learning centers in some of the schools.
Right.
And Kids After Hours is trying to get to those kids who can't do the learning at home because there isn't a parent at home. And so they're doing some really exciting things as far as moving into sort of the space to try to bridge some of that gap. So for those of you who don't know them, Kids After Hours did before and after care for a lot of the schools in Montgomery County. And so the article today was talking about what they're going to do now. They're going to provide childcare, and they're going to provide learning centers that are socially distant. And because they have a smaller group of kids that they're working with, they're doing it differently. And I was so excited to see, because I do think that one of the things that's happening is that they did find that way to do broad strokes of change. They are trying to figure out how to meet in the middle and be really creative. And they're technically not the school system. But I do think that that's a very exciting way to step into the middle and try to bridge for a lot of kids because they don't have access to supervision during the day.
So we have Kids After Hours at our school, and it's very interesting what they have done. What I've been hearing about from parents is that, if Kids After Hours can go back to school, why can't school? Right? And obviously the response to that is that Kids After Hours doesn't need to take everybody. They have limited numbers. So then it raises the question is whether you can go there only if you can afford it. I imagine that they are offering some scholarships, right? To do that. But I'm not sure how many of them our students are going to be scholarship and the financial model hold up. So it's very interesting. I want to know, Grace, from you, what did you think was interesting about the actual learning pod that they are trying to build?
So let me first answer the financial question. One of the things that I happen to know about Bob Sickles, who runs it, is that he does take the state vouchers for daycare. So if people are in the bracket where they have state assistance for that, he will help. I think that one of the things that's different is that he's setting it up so that there's 13 kids and he doesn't have to think about a bus. He doesn't have to think about any of the other things that the public school has to think about.
Sure.
And so, the kids can get out of their parents' car, be screened for COVID symptoms, and go be escorted straight with social distancing to their pod where they're socially distant, and it's the same set of 13 kids, which lowers the risk.
Sure.
I think that the reason, and I think the answer to the question about why can they do it and the public school is sheer volume. I mean, one of the things that I have to remind myself very regularly when I'm interacting with MCPS, especially in the IEP system or through some of the other bureaucratic things, is that there are more kids in Montgomery County schools than there were people in the entire county that I grew up in. So there's just a sheer volume
right.
that makes this an immovable mass, because there's just a huge quantity to try to move around, whereas Kids After Hours doesn't have that quantity. So they can be more flexible. They can turn things upside down. They can do that. And I think that it's very interesting to see I think that part of the reimagining that Kevin was talking about is probably to figure out how, if we're looking at this model is working in this little pod, can we replicate it over here with this little pod, and can we do it with this little pod? Because I don't know that there's a good answer for however many 100,000 kids are in MCPS. I don't think there's one answer.
167,000.
There's 20.
Susan?
If I could circle back a little with Kevin and talking about how can we really reimagine what we're doing. In elementary PE, as of today, we still have no instruction about how we're going to do this. What I would love to do is like flip the classroom, project-based PE. Instead of being in front of the little screen here and, you know, following some exercises, which are great for Rebecca's brain breaks, but for physical education, education that's physical, I want to give kids a project. You know, use a sock ball, use a paper ball, use, you know, your dog's tennis ball or whatever. And if you have space, you have to adjust it. But, you know, try different launch angles. You know, throw the ball with this angle, with that angle, with the, you know, distance, accuracy. Give them a project to go make it a science experiment, to go explore something, or teach them about taking their pulse, and then give them a whole laundry list of things to do. And then they can do that at night. They can do that different times. And when we come back to our once a week Zoom time, we can still have some of that activity time, but we can debrief those learning phys ed experiments that we did on the other times. So, and music teachers, elementary music teachers have spoken about that too. You're not all going to be trying to sing in front of the computer. You know, you'll get a lesson on something, whether it's percussion or the recorder or whatever it is. Go do it for some amount of time and then come back. And instead of me being the conveyor of all information, I want the kids to be sharing, you know, what did you learn? And then have that kid say, who has a connection to what he said? And then she adds something more in. And then it's not just, you know, speaking to the screen.
Orchid,
That's my wish.
Yeah. Orchid, can I bring you in for a second? Do you think that this sort of dialogue that's going on between, you know, sort of structure and reimagination and flexibility, I guess, where do you think your students in middle school stand with that? Do you think they are, they would like more structure, or do you think they would, that you know, this is a time to reimagine their school as well?
I think with middle school students, it's a little bit it's literally in the middle with middle school students. I think they're learning more about themselves, like they're at a time versus being in elementary school, they're learning more about themselves, but at the same time, they're learning more about themselves and like how they like things, but at the same time, you know, they're transitioning from being younger kids. So I think it's a little bit of both. And then what Mr. Schindel said about, is it Schindel or Schindel? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. You're muted.
Sorry, Schindel. Either
Schindel.
one.
Okay, I just want to make sure because people like to do that with my name, my last name too. So I wanted to double check. But I lost my train of thought. I just think it's meeting in the middle, honestly. So what Mr. Schindel was saying about, like, you know, they're so concerned about grades and being organized and things like that. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like it's, like I said earlier, it's going to be trial and error. I still think that organization is important because at the end of the day, I mean, we are being told that we have to deliver in a certain type of way or in a certain way. And as much as we want to reimagine, unfortunately, we have like the higher ups to try to satisfy. I think what it really comes down to, and this is kind of going off topic, but I'm going to come back to your original question, is like, how much can we actually innovate and reimagine within our own class? I'm not the type of teacher to sit there and talk to you for 50 minutes. Never have been, never will be. Even told my students, like in brick and mortar school, like, if I'm bored doing that, then you're definitely going to be bored. So, I mean, that's something that I'm definitely not going to do. But at the same time, I mean, I do think that students want a sense of routine within that innovation, within that reimagination. So they can expect, like, okay, we're going to come or we're going to log into class, and Mr. Gahi is going to do this and this and that. And then in a couple of minutes, we're going to break out and do something creative, even though we may not know what that creative assignment or creative task may necessarily be. There's room for that within the routine. You know what I mean? So it's like there's time built into the routine to do something that's a little bit different. But yeah, again, I mean, unfortunately, we have the higher ups to satisfy. I remember saying a couple of weeks back that I really wish that we could do classes at different times of day. I mean, why can't we do that? We're literally online. So if we have the ability to do classes like in the evening or late in the afternoon, then why can't we do that? Why do we have to teach a certain number of minutes per week? Why do we have to do that? All of these things are honestly really just arbitrary. And like, why can't we reimagine those things? Unfortunately, I really don't think that we have a system that listens to us. And
we got to make them listen to us.
What's that?
We have to make them listen to us.
I totally understand that. I really do. But I mean, and I agree with you, but I think that it's always like, I think that all of our efforts, unfortunately, in MCPS are going to be seen as us being like, this is how I feel. I feel like we are perceived, like teachers are perceived as being combative within MCPS. And I don't think we're necessarily being combative. I think we're trying to fight for things that we, number one, deserve, number two, need. And I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to meet the needs of our students. But unfortunately, I mean, with the like fun fact checking videos, for example, like it's a lot of just like I personally feel, and I feel like now I'm getting really off topic with your original question, sorry. But I mean, I just unfortunately feel like we are perceived as combative and we're not listened to the way that we should be listened to. So it's really upon us, like what kind of change can we make every single day, even though we're being told like we have to give a 50-minute lesson. Well, what kind of change can we create within that 50 minutes that, you know, shakes up the system a little bit, you know?
Well, I would say to answer that question, the proof is in the product, right? If we think that what we are going to do virtually as primarily people who deliver content is going to be successful for our students, and again, elementary school kids don't say school is boring, right? So this is a whole different ballgame. Elementary, fundamentally, you better be engaged in third grade. If you're not, then you know we got much bigger problems than just going online, right? But from the secondary perspective, if we think that what we have done and what we are going to do is so great, then we should do that. But I think most of us know here that we may be we're certainly, as I already said, we're certainly setting some kids up for failure. We know that. They will not be able to access the instructional methods at all. Those kids we're setting up for failure. So what do we do with the other kids, and how do we reduce that kind of gap that we know, you know, has the potential to emerge? And I just think that, you know, there's a good quote from Christopher Emdin, who wrote the book for white teachers who teach in the hood, something like that. And he said, you know, it comes down, and we know we've always been in this position. And as teachers, as conscientious teachers, we make this decision every single day, multiple times a day. And his quote is, you can decide, right, as a teacher, that you're going to do damage to the system or you're going to do damage to the student. And I would rather not do things that I know might be damaging to the students despite what the higher ups say. And the proof becomes in the product, right? So if the kids appreciate and they value what you do, you keep doing it.
Right.
And look, if the kids value covalent bonds and that's what they want to learn in chemistry and algebraic formulas, then by all means, that's what you should do. But we know there's a lot of kids in this moment, right? Grace mentioned earlier that we were kind of crisis management in the spring. We're crisis management right now. Those kids have not miraculously healed themselves over the summer. And if anything, the students that I keep in touch with, their mental health has been, I wondered, when we first started online, everybody was kind of okay. Then a couple weeks later, it went down a little bit. A couple weeks later, I saw some more deterioration. And I'm talking to students individually on Zooms. And I was wondering, is this just going to be, is this going to be kind of a roller coaster? Or is it just a steady downward spiral? And for a lot of those kids, it was a steady downward spiral. And I don't know if anything has been able to lift them up in the last 3 months. And so,
what do you think we can do, Kevin, about that?
So ready? I keep talking about content. Content is secondary, maybe. What we need to prioritize is health. And all levels of health. We need to prioritize individual health. That's mental, emotional, psychological, physical, right? And we need to prioritize social health. How do we build relationships? How do we build those ties that bond as we're all not in the physical spaces together? And we know that our kids are suffering both mentally and socially. And so, my fear is that the kids want very clear expectations on how they can get a grade. We need to prioritize intellectual health, which is not the same as academic health. Correct. We know that academic health can be a 4-point+ GPA, and those kids know that they have difficulties generating their own questions and thinking critically, right? So academic.
They're being, sorry, I don't.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, what do we do? I think we prioritize health, number one, not content, not tests. I've been encouraging kids and parents to boycott standardized tests for a long time. They have no idea how much power they have. Mm-hmm. If 15% of high school students in Montgomery County decided they weren't going to take the HSA, that's the end of the HSA. There's no mechanism that the state can respond and make them do that. They're not going to not give 15% of Montgomery County students, they're not going to say you don't get a diploma and tank Montgomery County property values. This is just not going to happen. Right? And so what I'm saying is that content, I understand we continue to conceive of ourselves as deliverers of content, but what do? We have to prioritize health, and that doesn't mean some soft, kumbaya, let's all sit around and do nothing. No, that's not what the kids want either. The kids want to be engaged, but they want to be engaged in things that are contextual, that are real, that are relevant. And so much of what we've done already, it doesn't meet that standard. And so I would say, take that curriculum and teachers got to really dig. I've been working, unpaid all summer, although I did teach a summer course too, because I want to figure out how to construct dialogues, right? Rather than just last spring, what I got was an exchange of monologues. There wasn't really that interaction among the people on the Zoom. And so I'm trying to, upgrade my own. So we got to dig deep, but I don't know. Sorry.
Go ahead, Orchid.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm just dying to get this question out. Okay, so I 100% agree with you. But okay, so you talked about academic versus intellectual health. And while I personally also believe that there is a difference, I mean, how can we promote or how can we encourage kids to really work on their intellectual health when they are being externally judged by their academic health? I mean, at the end of the day, they receive a grade, even though we do know that that's not necessarily a proper measure of what they've learned and how they've progressed. So, how do we do that? I'm genuinely asking that question because I can push that as much as I want at the end, in my classroom. But I mean, if a student still says, but Ms. D, I can't get a B, my mom will kill me, it's the only B on my report card. How can I say, that's okay? Didn't you learn something? Didn't you progress? Don't you have more interest in this topic now?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think we could get into what's the meaning of a grade, and that's been a discussion that has been, you know, a good question for decades and decades, right? What does a grade represent? I think that, you know, one of the things when we're talking about intellectual health, I think one of the things is we have to relinquish control as teachers. And I know that's really difficult. It may be impossible in elementary school. I don't know, right? But so much of what we've done and what the educational system demands is, you know, Ms. Dargahi, you teach this, and this is what you're judged on. That's what you say, this is what I'm judged on. How do I go beyond that, if it may be for the benefit of the students or not? I don't know. But I think that, you know, one of the things is we have to relinquish control, and we have to enter into a partnership with our kids. We have to.
Can I pair on that? Because the research for therapy absolutely reflects that. Across the board, every massive research study doesn't endorse one kind of therapy over another. The measure of whether or not our clients get better is entirely dependent on their relationship with us and whether or not they can form a bond with us that is healing. And I think that that transfers to teachers. When the subjects that I remember being engaged with the most were the teachers that formed relationships with me. The same is true for both my atypical learner and my normal learner. It really, like, the teacher that sees them tired and lethargic and says, hey, are you okay? That matters. That relationship is where we get health from. Those relationships and the bonds are far more important right now than everything else, because huge quantities of the population now are in isolation, and we do not function that way. Human beings are not meant to be that way.
Let's bring it back to first graders. Becky.
So what Grace said about relationships is 100% accurate. So I believe I may have said this last week, I cannot remember, but I was surprised to find that I was able to develop relationships through the computer for all of the students. They were all new to me. Right. And I was able to encourage them. And like Kevin said about engagement, I purposely made a space that at least they feel like, oh good, we're coming together and we're gonna, you know, do fun first grade things together. And also what Kevin mentioned about how the content, of course, is important, absolutely. But until they trust us and until they're engaged with us and until they think it's fun and they want to be there, which they did, they absolutely did. But until you have all of those things in place, it's going to be very challenging to have them master content if they aren't enjoying coming to Zoom every day. But it is I found this summer, you are absolutely can make learning through Zoom engaging and fun. And I actually still have my, so one thing I did this summer was, you know, as we were learning, I just bought stickers from Dollar Tree. And as we were learning, we put them in like 5 rows of 5, like 10 frames. And if a student gave like an answer or worked hard, I was just like, oh, which dog sticker do you want? Okay, you earned this one. I mean, things like that. And then every other kid's like, oh, I want to earn that too. So there are honestly amazing ways that we can engage them through a computer. I think we all realize it's not going to be the same as in a classroom, but there are things we can do. And like Grace said, there has to be that relationship. They have to trust you. They have to believe that you care deeply about them as a person. You have to say just good morning to them by name. And, oh, I see that your sister's sitting with you today. What's her name? So just really connecting with them is just so key. And that would be true in the classroom or through Zoom.
Does it?
I have to say one thing. because if we're talking to parents, right, about what they can do to help, one of the things I hope parents recognize, right? Number one, what Orchid said, we're not the enemy here, right? I know teachers that are busting their tails trying to learn Canvas, trying to learn Synergy, not getting paid for it. It's just it's our job, right? And it's what we're trying to do to prepare. With what Rebecca said and what I'm advocating, and what Grace said, the focus on relationships, we need to have a real clear understanding of how much time that takes in a virtual environment, because it's exponentially greater than in a physical environment.
Yes, it is.
So one of the things that we're saying that I want to make transparent is, if we're expected to plan lessons and design dynamic, engaging lessons and build relationships and grade work and do whatever else, right, we're supposed to do administratively, that we're not being paid for that time, right? And I'm not boiling it down to pay, but what used to take 50 hours is now going to take upwards of 70 or 80 hours, right? So I can build a relationship with a class of 30, but there's a few kids that are going to want to meet me individually, and I want to talk to them individually. And so that's now, if it's 3 kids, that's a 10-minute conversation for each kid. That's another 30 minutes. Where does that come from? And so I just, as we're talking about how do you help kids, just cut the kids some slack, really just, we kept saying last year, grace over grades. I heard it much more than I saw it. And the kids were really concerned about some of the stuff that was being assigned to them. When the school board made the decision that if kids got an A third quarter, they could just take that A for the semester. We should have been very transparent about that. And yet there were teachers that were withholding that information from the kids and still assigning them 2 and 3. It was just, it's maddening, right? So just flexibility, grace, relationships, all that stuff, I think, becomes really, really important.
So do you all want to know what we did at home?
Yeah.
So at home in the spring, I did not set any structure. I took off scaffolding, in fact. I said, you all figure it out. You make your own schedule. I am not involved. If you can get on Zoom, get off Zoom and get on Zoom, right? And I basically moved in the completely opposite direction. And I have a 4th grader, and at that time a 3rd grader, and a 6th grader and a 9th grader. So I did that with all of them, and part of that was I was able to take advantage of the pass-fail 4th quarter, and I said, what better time for these kids to be able to experiment with however they want to do it. What does it matter? It doesn't matter anymore. And so by taking away the consequence, right, it allowed a certain kind of resilience training that they would not otherwise get. I think my kids, as a consequence of not helping them, have become more resilient Zoomers.
Yes.
They've become more resilient in the work they do. And I think they lost some academic work, no doubt. And I think mostly they lost on math. But my son took a MOOC course on anatomy and physiology that he would not have taken otherwise. And that's not something I knew about him in the first place. So he discovered something about himself through the process of being forced to. Now, every once in a while, I would say, what's going on? Tell me. And I would be, I would hold them to some standard. But generally, I decided that the best thing to do would be to step back and not forward. And I don't think it's for everybody. I don't think this is for everybody. I'm not recommending this for, all families, and certainly not all kids. Some kids need much more structure. Mine are fairly neurotypical. And so, I can have them do that. But it worked out quite well. And, my daughter made movies, and Another one wrote I have it somewhere. She wrote a story that involved Greek myths, where it has Zeus and Athena and Eris and all of them, and it's hold on a minute, 1, 2. Geez, it's 5 pages long. She's in 4th grade, so yeah. So I think so in terms of reimagination, I think it's possible. I think as parents, sometimes we get too much involved in this idea that we are falling behind. The question is, who are we falling behind and to what end? I mean, it's a matter of sequencing. I was thinking about this, right? If I lived in a particularly hilly area, say in Switzerland or something, right, and there was more ice than there was roads, I think my kids would learn how to ride, how to ski before they learn how to ride a bike, right? Right, and so but they would eventually learn how to ride a bike. I've seen 4-year-olds riding a bike, and I've seen like 10-year-olds learning how to ride a bike. There's a wide range of, of developmental time where you can do all of that. And so, to pigeonhole and say, no, he has to learn how to ride a bike between the ages of 4 and 6. Otherwise, somehow, the kid's a failure. It's just completely, I think as parents, we have to realize that. And, if we can do that, I think we will make some lemonade here.
I think that's important. I think one of the things you said, this may not be for everyone. But one of the things is we haven't really cultivated that in our kids either. I mean, much of education, almost all of education is predicated on control from the top down, right? Unless you want to get into a Sudbury Valley model and go to Fairhaven School in PG, which is a free school, and I know a bit about that. And, I know some kids that have come out of there and have loved it. But, I think that at a certain point, we have to kind of take the training wheels off. And as you did, hey, you're on your own. But there's so much control and fear there, right? Especially for those kids that have their eyes on top colleges and, these elite positions and things like that. Is that, like I said, when I ask kids, how can I help you this year? They said, we want you to tell us exactly what we need to do in order to get the grade that we want. And, the message is, I'm sorry, but I'd never do that anyway. And I'm not going to do that here. I'm not interested in controlling you while you're sitting in your bedroom, right? It's bad enough I do it while you're in my classroom. And so it's,
Also, for my own students, I will allow them to eat on camera.
You do not allow them?
Yeah, I will allow them to eat on camera.
Yeah, I mean, I allowed them to eat in school. I mean,
yeah, I do
you're
too.
Hungry, you're hungry.
I mean, you're going to be hungry. You're not going to pay attention. So I don't care if you eat in my classroom, whether it's Zoom or whatever else.
When I was in Maryland, I actually had a student order a pizza and have it delivered to the classroom. They got 2 large pizzas.
Yeah, that's great.
Walked in and they just passed around all the pizzas.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one time someone actually asked me, like, Ms. D, you mind if I eat? And I said, why are you asking me to eat? Like, that's, I mean, if you really think about that, like, why are you I'm like, just clean up. Like, that's all you gotta do. Just make sure you clean up. But very quickly, I wanted to chime in about this, like, topic of control. I mean, I'm a world language teacher, and I don't understand why we have a 2-year world language requirement for graduation. What if it's just not your thing? What if you'd much rather do something else? And I know that there's also like, I think you can do like 2 years of world languages, or you can do a couple of years in like the CTE program, I believe, or I could be getting that wrong. You can do something like as an alternative, but that's not, sorry, give me 1 second. But that's not available in all schools. So, I mean, I think it's really awful, because you have students, for example, who are behind, like, in their reading levels of English, and then they have to take a foreign language in order to graduate. I mean, imagine the pressure that you
hold on a minute, Orchid. If they have a foreign language already because they are behind, why do they need to take it again?
No, I'm saying, what do you mean? Because they're behind?
So if they're falling behind, when they're behind in their reading, a lot of them are ELL students, right?
No.
No?
Native English speakers who are monolingual students who may be behind
Okay. I know.
in terms of reading and will still be required to take foreign language and are honestly really struggling and to no fault of their own. I mean, that's just cruel to me. That's cruel. So, I mean, absolutely. It comes down to this idea of control and really lack of creativity in our own education system of why do we have to say you have to take this subject area and you have to take it for this many years in order to move on, like in order to graduate. That makes
that goes back almost to the Committee of 10, which was 10 rich white college professors around the year 1900 who decided this is what a school curriculum looks like. And that's essentially what we've been doing. And I don't mean to say, I'm not one of these kind of disruptors and smash education to pieces and just give everybody a screen. We have changed what we've been doing in the last 100 years, but as far as the curriculum goes, not much.
And also, Sunil, you mentioned like if they are already, or if they're ELL. I mean, you have students who are ELL and then will also need to take a foreign language. I mean, I've had several students who, are still in ESOL and are in Spanish as a world language because they need to fulfill a graduation requirement.
Can they just take a placement test?
No.
No.
No?
Nope.
All right.
We make them take their first language. Think about that.
Yeah, things to know. Grace, you're trying to say something, and go ahead.
I think that it's really interesting. The other thing that I think really this opens up is the idea of being able to have some of the more advanced kids pace themselves so that they're not necessarily having to pace with everybody else. One of the things that I have heard so many times, and I remember saying it to my parents, is I can't stand reading a book and being told to stop at page so-and-so so that I can have a discussion. And, but this allows us the opportunity to read to this page and then comment on this chat room, and then read to the next one and comment on this chat room. And so it gives us the opportunity to pace very differently. And I think that that is so marvelous for the kids who are self-starters and gobble up information. My kid who struggled with distance learning last spring and barely did 50% of the assignments, took an online Greek and Norse mythology class and could talk about nothing else. Nothing else. He was telling me about how the Greek mythology played out in DC Comics and didn't I see the connection? And I'm a parent who didn't want to hear about either. But he was sewing all of this together because he was taking it and it was his interest level and he could pace it. And I think that we have an opportunity now to rethink it that way because, if we're not just delivering content and we're saying, you need to get this content by this date, here are 5 ways you can learn it, I think we're better off.
And I think that's one of, this is Google's dream, right? No, it is. I mean, Google's going to profit from this that people can't even imagine how the tech companies, this is one of the things they said, give them a screen and let them go. Let them individualize the instruction. They'll work at their own pace. And I think that, I'm always one who tries to try on the thesis and then the antithesis, right? So, yep, individualized instruction is really important. However, there has to be that social piece as well, right? And that you have to work with other people. As you said, isolation isn't good for anyone over extended periods of time. And so, but we do have some of those kids, and I know I teach some of those too, who actually got along quite well in the spring because they were very introverted. They did not want to bring attention to themselves. You give them the assignment, they'll do it. They did a great job, and you know, give them the credit. But you know, it's just, we're juggling with so much, you know, and to come to that screen time, so you know, how can parents help? The screen time becomes really, really important, right? But it's one of the things I've tried to focus on for about the last 10 years. I've done a project in my class called Digital Downtime, where we log all the screen time that is used. And kids, if you ask a class full of 11th graders whether they're on screens too much, every hand goes up, but they have no idea how much time they spend on screens. And so they write a contract, and then they can't use screens for a week for anything that is social or entertainment oriented. And I think, you know, here's one of the things we should put pressure on Amazon to just deliver free books, because one of the things that's happening is schools are not going to buy textbooks because we didn't get them all from last year. The kids didn't return. And so now everything is going digital. Schools are signing contracts with digital textbook companies. We're getting e-copies of books. And so that's one of the things that we should be really, really cognizant of. How much time are we expecting our students and our teachers to spend on screens, because we know that the levels are already unhealthy and they're only going to get worse.
Right. With 3 and 4 hours of online screen-based teaching, I think all that Minecraft time is going to have to be cut. So
Something's got to be cut.
Yeah, no, that's, I think, a critical lesson for parents to really take seriously, that we need to make sure that if we are going to do that much of schoolwork on screen, then we are not also saying that, oh, 2 hours of Minecraft a day is fine, because it is, right? Because you just exhausted the eyes and the brains from 9 to 3, and you know, you can't be doing it until 8 p.m. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I mean, yes, I agree with you, right? To an extent. However, you know, at that point, are we sucking all the joy out of a kid's life who gets joy from 2 hours of Minecraft? And maybe they're, you know, I don't know, this is something that's tough. I need to figure out ways to engage my students with just walks around their neighborhood, thinking about things, writing down things, notes on pen and paper, pick up a book. Those screens, you know, I think that's something we really need to be cognizant of. And you're right, as that goes, as academic screen time goes up, are we going to cut that other screen time? And I don't know. I think that raises, you know, more issues in and of itself.
Correct. It's not easy, and you know, I feel like you know, those are the decisions we should keep in mind as we were doing the scheduling. But I think, you know, MCP has basically responded to the public demand to approximate traditional school hours every day, and so therefore we are where we are at. So there was a public demand, and I don't blame MCPS so much for it, as I think you know, as I think we as parents sort of wanted it. The one thing that I would think is that, you know, changing, reimagining requires those relationships as well. So it's very important for teachers and parents to have that relationship. And, you know, we've now gone over our set time. We started a little bit late, but we have gone over our set time. This is an extraordinarily exciting conversation to me. To me, this kind of conversation is what makes me want to run for the Board of Education. I doubt I'll get a lot of BOE.
And it's what makes us want you to win.
I doubt I'll get a lot of you know, this kind of discussion if I'm at a BOE meeting. But I'm hoping that that's, you know, this will be the really this will be the joy that you know, that of bringing about and reimagining what we do for our kids. So I want to, you know, Susan had planned to show us some screen some exercises, and I'm going to let her do that, and then I'm going to wrap it up, because we can't keep going. I would like to go on to a long time, but I think I have to let you all go. But Susan first.
Sure.
Right.
All right. Let me share my screen. Hang on a minute. I'm not sure what happened. Oh, there it is. There's my drive. Let's see. I'm a little, I'm new to this online teaching here.
Well, getting you prepared.
Right. So, again, just wanted to put up some ideas for how you can do some stretching and some upper body work just around the house. And whether you're 5 years old or 50 years old, these body movements, the bear, you start off in sort of a A-frame and, you know, walk your hands out, walk your feet behind. It's more challenging than people may think. And I just want to, whoops, where's my next one? Offer some of these as when you have your your Go Noodle breaks. Once you teach these to the kids, they enjoy them. The monkey, your hands go down and you move side to side.
That was hard. I will tell you that one is difficult.
It is. It is.
Yep.
Frog is a little easier. The squat position there. And
Are you jumping in the frog, Susan?
yeah, you can. I mean, you can take them to whatever level you want. In my PE classes, I give kids 5 minutes to do any upper body work they want, and in grades 3, 4, 5. And I've shown them, like, you could do, if you did a crab walk and it's easy for you, can you do a crab walk with one leg held up in the air? So you're engaging your abs, you're engaging your glutes, and all of that. So same thing for the bear. The bear can have a broken leg and hold one leg up in the air, but you don't need a lot of space, and you shouldn't try and go super fast. It's kind of a cop out if you go super fast because you're using your momentum instead of actually working through these things. But just a couple simple exercises that kids of all ages can do.
So the bear, the frog, the monkey, what am I missing?
And the crab.
And the crab, okay.
Yep.
All right, there you have it. Last words, folks. What do you, any thoughts you want to leave us with?
Well, if I'd say, the title was, helping parents. And so think about, what you can do, and don't worry about being perfect because there is no perfect. Do what you can when you can. And, if the internet is out one day, the internet's out one day, so to just sort of, go with what you can, and to try and keep everyone's stress down.
All right. Or or you can connect to Facebook. Don't get stressed out.
The thing that I would say is to watch the isolation, and if you need to figure out creative ways to do that, ask for help.
Who do you ask for help?
The mental health community has been overwhelmed with the amount of need. And I think that there are lots of ways that we can be creative to help support the parents who are having huge amounts of, like, here in 5 minutes, you need to be mom, and then you need to be worker bee, and now you need to be teacher. And in 5 minutes, her brain's going to break because that's too much role confusion. And so the best thing to do is talk to other moms. Do Zoom happy hours, do Zoom coffee dates, find ways to connect even in the middle of isolation, because without it, we're not going to make it through it. And neither are the kids. So
Self-care.
my message to parents is take care of yourself, because none of the rest of this is going to matter if everything comes apart.
Anyone else?
I would just, like I said before, I think health is the priority, right? We need to recognize that individual health and social health are inseparable. When when we get into fights and send people to hospitals because one person told you to put on a mask, right? That stuff affects us, right? And we've got, we're socially unhealthy now. And as Grace just said, the mental health, kids are crying out. And so I think we just got to prioritize whatever we're doing. If we are not working in the best interest of kids and society at large, I don't know why we're doing it, right? And if you can't justify it, then you should stop it and take the consequences of that. And the proof, like I said, is in the product. That's how movements get started. I think we got some massive change that needs to happen. It's already going to happen whether we want to or not.
That's true.
We're going to manage it. We're going to manage it, and we're going to direct it, or we're going to get overwhelmed and we're going to get crushed by it. And so, ride that wave.
That's right, Mr.
And to add on to what both of them said, to parents, that includes anything that you may need. We are still here for your children. This is why we get up and do what we do every day. So even through a computer, socially distanced, if you need something, please stay in touch with your school community, because we are still here for you. And whatever you or your child might need to be successful, whether it's a mental health thing or anything that we can do to help you, please stay in touch with us, with your school community, so that we can support what you need to get through this. It might just be something small. It could just be, I just need a whiteboard. I just need a composition book. No problem. We will find the ways to get you what you need. Just stay in touch with us.
Yeah.
Orchid, do you want to say something?
I think during these times, we just really need to be really flexible and forgiving with ourselves, with each other, with our communities. We're all under a lot of stress right now. I mean, things changed literally overnight. I mean, we were told basically in 2 days that we weren't going to come back. And then even though that news was evolving as to how long it was going to be extended, I mean, we kind of deep down knew, because the situation was getting worse and worse. So I think while we may think, oh, we're getting used to it, this is just a new normal, and not yet. I think it's really not. I mean, we're still grieving a lot of things that we've lost. I know as a teacher, I mean, I tutored a child today, or a student today, who was taking a summer course, and his dad reached out to one of my colleagues, who reached out to me, and just having some communication with a student again, and asking them well, what do you need help on, and then going through the laundry list of everything they need to do, and just being oh, you know what I mean, just kind of having that communication, just saying I just miss the kids. I miss the kids, and I miss the kids being kids, and just that interaction. And that's really, I mean, it's really sad for me, especially from my personal experience. I mean, I got out of the profession that I was in so that I wouldn't sit at a desk all day. Now I'm sitting at a desk all day. And of course it's not the same. I mean, I'm doing something different, but I think a lot of us, we really associate the word grief with kind of this tangible loss of something. But I think we're really grieving the loss of a lot of other things right now. And we need to be really flexible with each other, flexible with the parents, flexible with the kids, and just, really forgiving of everything right now and everybody.
Well, thank you. On that note, thank you very much. I am really sorry. I'm going to fix the Facebook issue. We're going to try and do this next Thursday as well. So if you want to come back, let me know. Thank you. Have a good night and a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.